You're listening to New Churches Podcast, a production of Send Network on newchurches.com. We discuss all things church planting. If you're looking to take your next step toward multiplication, you're in the right place. Newchurches.com provides relevant and reliable resources for church planters, church multipliers, and disciple makers. Our growing library features pastors, planters, and church leaders like Ed Stetzer, David Platt, Trillia Newbell, Christine Hoover, Dahadi Lewis, Trevin Wax, and many others.
Welcome back to the New Churches Podcast. My name is Noah Oldham. I'm here, as always, with Vance Pitman. Vance, it is great to be with you today.
Noah, it's great to hang with you again today. Exciting times, new year, a lot of new for you and I. We've both planted churches in cities in different parts of the country, and now through only a God-initiated set of circumstances, now both call the Atlanta, Georgia area home. Which neither one of us saw coming a year ago. If you'd asked either one of us a year ago, we had burial plots in St. Louis and Las Vegas, Nevada. Like my kids knew that when Dad dies, he's already shown us in the backyard where we're burying him. But here we are, new year, new season, exciting opportunities in front of us, excited about what God's got for both our families as we do life together here in Atlanta. But yeah, a lot of new. It's exciting stuff, man.
Yeah, man, we have come to the end of one year and the beginning of another. And church planters, they have made it through the rush of spring and the sprint toward Easter. They've weathered all those challenges of the hot weather months in the summer. They've endured the ministry marathon that is the fall. And then many planters hit things really, really hard this past December, maximizing that cultural moment to engage their cities with the gospel. And now there's this window. Most of the country is cold and a bit slower. But before we know it, we're going to repeat that thing all over again. And what I want to talk about with you today is how to not get caught in that grind year after year after year without creating rhythms of rest to sustain and to keep them emotionally, physically, and spiritually healthy. And Vance, what I think is so beautiful about this is you've actually written a book on this subject. So talk to us about that and how it relates to this subject.
Yeah, there are people who write books because they're experts on a subject, and then there are people who write books because they failed in the subject and had to learn the hard way. And that's really the story of my book, Noah. The one you're referring to is the Stressless Life book that I wrote, and it's really born out of my own personal collapse. God called my family to Las Vegas, Nevada in September 1999. Then we moved there in December 2000. For 22 years, we're involved in church planting. But about 12 years in, I hit a wall. I was doing exactly what you just described for our listeners, just like a lot of church planters. Man, that yearly grind of just getting after it. And church planting, we all know, can be the highest highs and the lowest lows, all in the same 24-hour period, day after day after day after day. And it just keeps coming. It's like the vision that I've often used to describe it is the whitewater rapids. Like that's church planting. It's every twist, every turn, every bump, and it's fast. You have all the issues of normal church, which is draining enough. Plus you got issues of where are we going to meet this week and what location's going to allow us in and who's going to kick us out and where do we have this program and where do we do this gathering. And so all these challenges, and I was living in the middle of that for 12, 13 years. And I thought I was doing fine, man. I had just put my head down. We were seeing a lot of success from what the world would call success, but we were also having a lot of challenges. One of my best friends had fallen morally in the first 6 years of our ministry, and we'd had economic collapses, and we'd met in 9 locations in our first 10 years. We'd been run out of 2 or 3 locations for a variety of reasons, and just challenge after challenge until one day I came home from the office. And one more thing is I had this chip on my shoulder because I'd kind of grown up in the Bible Belt, and there was this accusation that sometimes pastors didn't work hard. And so I just had this mentality that I was going to prove the world wrong. I was going to work hard. So I was the first guy at the office, the last guy to leave. And 12 years in, I went home one day, sat down with my wife and kids to have dinner. Couldn't really function, couldn't put sentences together. Went upstairs, laid down to take a nap, and slept for 8 straight days.
Wow.
My wife would wake me up and say, hey, you need to eat. I'd try to eat, but I wouldn't eat. I'd go back to sleep, lost like 16, 18 pounds and over those 8 days from not eating. And finally, she dragged me out of bed, took me to a doctor, and he basically said I had a physical version of a mental breakdown, that my body physically just said enough, that I was not resting well. I was working too much. I'd become obsessed with the work, and my body collapsed. And what I had to learn is we got limits, man, and God made us spiritual, physical, mental, emotional beings, and if we don't care for ourselves in those areas and make sure that there's a balance between work and rest, then we're going to make some major mistakes. And that's exactly what I did. I made some major mistakes. And what ultimately had to happen is they had to, the leaders that came around me, thank God for them. My kids had taught me this principle that whenever I didn't grow up with technology. I'm kind of late to the technology game. And so my kids get frustrated with me at times. But what they taught me is if something's not working, you got to just shut the whole thing off, let it reboot and start over.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much what they did with me. They made me go through a hard reset.
Yep.
They shut everything down for 9 months. They didn't let me come to a counseling appointment. I didn't come to an office. I didn't lead a staff meeting. I preached a couple of times a month, but that was it. Other than preaching, I didn't travel. Everything else shut down for 9 months to do a hard reset. And then I had to reorganize my life out of that collapse. So what we're talking about today with balancing work and rest rhythms is critically important.
You know, Vance, as you're sharing that story, I just think back to the early days of church planting for me, and maybe speaking to what some church planters think when they hear this. I remember sitting in conference after conference with the big name guy on stage, and they talk about even their missteps, even their failures, even their difficult things that they didn't do quite well. And they tell all of us, don't do it like me. But as a guy sitting in the seats, listening to him speak on stage, I remember my heart saying, yeah, it's easy for you to say because you're still the guy on stage. Don't do it like me. But then we can feel like that's the only way to get there. And so I just want to speak that to church planters. You know, it can be that grind. There's always something to do or something to get done that needs your attention, time, your skills. But God knows that, yet he still calls us to live in a balance of work and rest. What do you think it is about church planters that makes them so prone to living out without these proper rhythms of rest? What is it about our DNA that leads us there?
Noah, I'm going to answer that. But before I do, I want to lay this principle down that rest is a matter of spiritual obedience.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to have in our minds, and this gets to one of the reasons why church planters make this mistake, is that Jesus demands that we work hard, that we be diligent, that we exhaust ourselves. And that is true. There is an element of truth in that. But at the same time, there's a balancing tension of spiritual obedience. In Mark chapter 6, Jesus looks at his disciples, and here's what he says. And this is after they've been sent out by two, and they've done all this ministry. They come back, and it says, the apostles returned to Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. Like they're almost proud. Like, look at all that we've done. And he said to them, attaboy. No, that's not what he said. Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while.
That's so good.
For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. Jesus looked at them. They were so busy, they didn't even have time to put food in their mouth. And listen, I got to be honest, as a church planter, I am wired to be busy. I actually take pride in my flesh, in showing you my schedule and how busy it is.
Yep.
Like I boast in my busyness. And Jesus saw them that way, and he said, come away and rest. And understand this, in the text, rest is an imperative, meaning it's a command. He's not suggesting they do this. He's commanding they do this. So I read that one day, and here's what I wrote in my journal. Here's the point. It is not unspiritual to pull away from the demands of ministry to rest. As a matter of fact, it's unspiritual not to.
Wow.
In ministry, I must give myself totally to the work. I must, by His Spirit working in me, labor to exhaustion. But I must equally give myself to rest and refreshment.
Yeah.
Otherwise, my labor in ministry will be short-term.
Yeah.
Long-term faithfulness in ministry demands balancing the seasons of work and rest.
So good.
This is a matter of spiritual obedience. Don't let your flesh cause you to boast in your exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus says, hear Him, come away and rest. So you ask the question, what is it about planters that makes us so prone to living without proper rhythms of rest? I think it's two things. I think it's our spiritual wiring, partially.
Mm-hmm.
Most church planters have an apostolic missionary wiring. Now, don't mishear that, theologian, and say I'm calling us apostles. That's not what I'm saying. I understand that there was a unique group of men that were called to be apostles in the early church, but there is an apostolic wiring that's a missionary zeal. And if I had to describe the driving motivation of that zeal, here it is: urgency.
Yep.
There's a consuming passion for the lost being found, the far from God being brought near to God. And that spiritual wiring creates an urgency that says, I don't have time to rest. There are people in need of the gospel. There are peoples that have not yet heard. And yet Jesus, who knew that truth better than we could, said you got to rest.
Got to.
So it's our spiritual wiring, but I also think it's our personality makeup. A lot of church planters are driven entrepreneurs, which means we place high expectations, not just on others, but on ourselves. And so you take our personality wiring that's entrepreneurial, and you take our spiritual wiring that's apostolic and urgent, and I think it creates the perfect storm for us to lead ourselves to collapse.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what puts us in that position. I know it's what put me in that position.
Yeah.
And why I failed the test.
Yeah, over and over again. So that you said it best, it's a perfect storm. And so in the midst of that perfect storm, knowing that's coming, there's got to be a very disciplined set of preparing yourself for that. And compensating for that. And so what are some of those indispensable, and I mean that, indispensable rhythms that planters need to add into their lives right now to make sure they're preparing themselves to fight against that tendency?
All right, I'm going to give you 6.
Okay, let's go.
You ready?
Yeah, I am.
And these are going to be quick. Number 1 is daily. So when I rewired my life, I did it around these 6 things. Daily. You have to daily build into your rhythm 2 things: abiding and margin. It's so easy to become so busy in planting a church that you forget the primary call on your life is not planting a church. The primary call on your life is following Jesus.
Yeah.
It's being with Him. And people that have heard me teach have heard me say this line that the primary call on my life is not ministry. The primary call on my life is intimacy. Ministry is what He does out of the overflow of intimacy. So carving out time daily to abide, to make sure that you are abiding in Christ every day is imperative. It must be a part of our daily rhythm. But then secondly, building margin or white space into your daily calendar. If you come and look at my calendar now, my calendar has daily margin built into it. You say, why would you do that? If you look at the life of Jesus in the Gospels, Jesus is constantly interrupted and never in a hurry. You look at my life, I'm always in a hurry. And I don't have time for interruptions. Like my schedule doesn't have any margin for that. Some of the most poignant stories in the Bible were not on Jesus's schedule.
Yeah.
They were interruptions that became divine appointments, like the woman at the well, or blind Bartimaeus, Zacchaeus, all these stories that were not scheduled appointments. They were divine appointments. And if Jesus hadn't left margin in his calendar that day, we would never have heard those stories.
Yeah.
I don't know how many Zacchaeuses I've missed in my life because they didn't have, they had to wait 6 weeks to get on my schedule. I didn't have margin built into my life for those moments that God. So daily, there's got to be an abiding, and the abiding will give you the sensitivity to those margin moments, allowing the Holy Spirit to lead you. So daily, there's got to be abiding, and there's got to be margin and white space built into your calendar. And man, that's hard, because when I saw white space in my calendar, I had the temptation to fill it. I needed to put an appointment in there. So that's daily. Second is weekly. Weekly, you must build the Sabbath principle into your life. Now, let's just be honest, church planner. It ain't going to be on Sunday. For us, Sabbath ain't Sunday. Like, we're there setting up, taking down. There's so much work to be done. Preaching sermons, following up with people, connecting with new people. But you got to build that principle in. You're not more spiritual than the Bible, and the Bible gives us a principle of Sabbath. So you got to make sure. For me, that's Fridays. Fridays have been my Sabbath day, when my family knows that's a day that we just don't do ministry. That's a day that we disconnect. It's a day that we rest. It's a day we do things together. And then obviously we seek the Lord on Sunday and worship, but you got to build that principle of Sabbath into your life. And I know some people are going to hear that. They're going to push back. You can push back, build it into your life however you convictionally feel like is right. But that principle has to be there weekly. Even the Lord rested after 6 days of work. So you got to build it in. Third is monthly. Monthly, I build in what's called sanity weekends. Now, what does that mean? It means 3-day windows where I'm not doing anything ministry related. I realized about after this period of time in my life where I had the collapse, that we were doing Saturday night services. We were doing Sunday services. We were working 5 days a week. We were literally working around the clock, a lot of times 7 days a week. And I was never having what I understood to be a weekend, which most people understand a weekend. Now, church is a part of their weekend, but they get a weekend where they're away from their work. I didn't have that because the predominant section of my work happened on the weekend. I wasn't building. So I now have I look at my schedule and I'll pick out minimum 1, if I can get it, 2 3-day blocks in every month where there's no ministry happening on my schedule. If you went and looked at it today, it's called a sanity weekend, where I won't take anything. I don't take a wedding. I don't take anything. I won't do any ministry related stuff to give myself a break. And that's every month. Target is twice a month. Number 4 is quarterly. Quarterly, once a quarter, I try to disconnect for 3 to 5 days. I'm not talking about a vacation. I'm not talking where you go out. I'm just saying you carve out some time once a quarter to be away from the work. And that can be, if it's in one of those months, it's obviously includes a sanity weekend. That's a part of that. But I would just add a couple of days to one of those sanity weekends once a month. A lot of times my wife and I will drive down to California, or we'll go up to the mountains, or we'll just have a stay-at-home weekend where we just do stuff together and just hang out. But I just turn the phone off. I don't look at email. I don't respond to anything. And that's once a quarter. Annually, build in vacation. Depending on your context, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever your church and your situation allows, but build in vacation. For me, what I had to do after the collapse is I put all my vacation together once a year in a block and take it in one chunk. When I tried to do a few days here and a few days there and a few days here, I never completely disconnected. I have to disconnect. For me, it's about 8 to 9 days in before I start disconnecting. You know you're on vacation when you don't remember what day of the week it is. If you hadn't gotten to that point yet, you hadn't really vacated. You're still thinking about the schedule. And then every 5 years, I take an extended sabbatical of 8 to 12 weeks, again, depending on what your church allows. My church was very generous, especially after watching me collapse. But every 5 years, 8 to 12 weeks. So that's the rhythm. Daily, abide in margin. Weekly, Sabbath. Monthly, sanity weekends. Quarterly, get away, pull away from it, annually a vacation in a block, and then every 5th year a sabbatical. And for me, now, I'm not saying that's the law of the Medes and the Persians. Everybody's got to decide for themselves. I need that kind of intentionality because my flesh is wired that hard to perform.
And I'll just say to the church planners that are listening, you are going to feel this temptation to not do this because you're going to feel like you can't advocate for yourself. And so you need to send this to a trusted person in your fellowship and say, listen to this with me, and I need your help to protect my life from a lack of rest and eventual burnout. We just installed the new lead pastor of August Gate, the church I planted over 15 years ago. And in that installation sermon, I actually told the body, make this a part of his job description. Make him take days off just to seek the Lord and to be with him. Because he's not going to do it. He's going to work hard. He's going to feel that.
Right.
He's got it. And so, church planner, make sure you have people in your life advocating for you so that you can fight for this obedience to Christ. Well, Vance, you just
Noah, let me say this to that leader that's going to listen to this to advocate. The greatest growth seasons in the life of our fellowship in 22 years happened when I was in some of the greatest seasons of rest. And because you would think in those seasons when you maybe things back up a little bit. I'm telling you, when you honor the principle of spiritual rest and obedience, God always blesses obedience. And some of the greatest things that happened in our fellowship happened when I was most rested.
Well, you know that. I mean, Vance, I know you like to do CrossFit, like to work out, and it's that muscle growth. You tear it, you tear it, you tear it. It only grows when you rest it and you fuel it. And church planting is the same way. It's that grind. You got to rest to see the growth happen. That's such a good.
And you also identify key leaders who step up in your moments of rest that begin to exercise their spiritual gifts in a way they couldn't when you weren't resting.
That's good.
And you begin to see ownership taken at another level. Travis Ogle, our executive vice president at Send Network, Travis really stepped in and began to lead at Hope when I was in that 9 months of collapse. And God so elevated him that when I came back, it was a totally different work rhythm that he and I had that happened out of that. And so there's just, I can't emphasize enough how important this is.
Yeah, obeying God will always yield good results. That's so good. So you've given us a number of things to add into our lives. What about, is there anything that planters need to remove from their life right now so that rest can actually happen?
Yes, I'll give you 3 quick ones. Number 1, they need to remove a wrong identity. And here's what I mean by that. You are not called to plant a church. Jesus said, I will build my church.
That's good.
Jesus does it, not you. So there's got to be I got to get this yoke off of my back that it's my responsibility to get this done. It's my responsibility to follow him. And he will get it done. Faithful is he who calls you. He will bring it to pass, is what Paul wrote.
Amen.
So got to get rid of a wrong identity. Number 2, you got to get rid of a wrong philosophy. The philosophy of much of North American church planting is the superstar, Lone Ranger, high-capacity planter. The philosophy of the New Testament is team. Paul's the greatest church planter who ever lived. The Bible never uses the word Paul without almost always using the word and. Because the next word is always Paul and Timothy, Paul and Barnabas, Paul and Silas. Paul did this with others. You need a team around you that allows for these seasons of rest and work, because when some are resting, others have got to step up. So there's got to be a team in place. So you got to get rid of wrong identity, wrong philosophy. And number 3, you got to get rid of a wrong sense of urgency. What I mean by that is, yes, we do need to engage the non-believer. Yes, the lost need to be saved. But church planting is a marathon and not a sprint. And if you run a marathon like it's a sprint, you won't finish the race.
That's so good. I just want to say to those planters who've gone through a really hard season, it's right now a chance for you to take intentional rest. Vance and I, we both love football. And one of the great things after a Friday night high school football game, Saturday was always no contact. Even Monday was no contact. You've got to rest. So you've had a long, hard season, a long year, a long few years. It's time to lean into the Lord, take some rest, because when you don't, that's when injuries happen. That's when the game plan gets messed up. Vance, man, thank you so much. This is gold. It's going to help guys, by God's grace, to really last and endure for the years to come.
Amen.
And thank you all for listening to the New Churches podcast. We hope that this episode is something that you will really, truly take to heart so you can see with us, a healthy, multiplying church planted everywhere for everyone. We will see you next time.
You've been listening to the New Churches Podcast, brought to you by Send Network. If you like what you heard, take a few minutes to rate and review us or share this episode with a friend. It's the best way to show your support. To find more reliable resources to start your new church well, visit newchurches.com.